So I'm just going to let Brian and no, it's all right. Look, you're like the best. You're like, oh God, the headmistress has spoken. Okay. So, good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. You could have chosen to be in the sunshine. I swear to God, I almost didn't turn up because I just thought, why? It's 26 degrees. I could be in the park. So, very good afternoon to our fantastic speakers. Raise your hands. Show your faces. Okay, and of course to our on-site and to our online audiences. Very important. Are your phones on silent? Can you please check that? That's critical. Not something we need to do much of, but starting to do more of it at the moment. So a very warm welcome to this event. You know what it's called. Fishing Without Bycatch, Mitigation Measures to Protect Sensitive Species. It's hosted by BirdLife Europe and Central Asia, and of course, as you well know, it's part of Ocean Week, during which 6 environmental NGOs in Brussels highlight some of the really compelling threats faced by the ocean and its inhabitants, but importantly, explore and propose solutions and policy recommendations to tackle them. And the reason I focus on that solutions is because we are gearing this event towards solutions. It does not mean we are not identifying and talking about the challenges. I think probably you know what those are, but we really are coming with solutions and looking at those. Now, one of these threats, of course, to marine species is bycatch. You all know when fishers unintentionally catch species such as seabirds, but also in this case, we'll be discussing sea turtle, marine mammals, sharks and rays in their fishing gears. So the figures are huge. I think, Martin, you may give some more on seabirds and sea turtles this year that are needlessly killed. Of course, it's important to underline that for fishers themselves, or many fishers, bycatch, of course, means damaged equipment, it means lost fish, it means lost bait, it means precious time wasted, sorting it all out. So there's also that side of things and a willingness among many to help to change things. Now, there are solutions. That's the good news. I said we're focusing on them, and that is the focus of the next 90 minutes. My name is Katrina. I'm a broadcaster and moderator, and I have the pleasure of navigating us through those 90 minutes with speakers from the Commission, the Parliament, and the wider stakeholder community, and also at member state level. Don't forget, at 5:30, I say it to you online, but hey, you're not going to be with us, there is drinks. You can get your hands on something cold and alcoholic if that's your thing. One thing I want to say, just before I invite Martin, and I know you said, Martin, that you were going to pick up on some of the things, Martin Harper, who I'll introduce from BirdLife, and what I'm going to say here. Contextually, as you know, the EU knows about bycatch, has been aware of it for decades. We are waiting for the action plan to come out. So in 2012, the action plan was published. The 2030 biodiversity strategy includes an action plan to conserve fisheries resources, to protect marine ecosystems, but not enough is being done. So that action plan is coming. It's not yet here. It's been postponed. So we're going to talk about our hopes for that, and also worth bearing in mind that Restoration Law 2, which is of course linked, mitigation is linked, has also been postponed. So that's a bit of the context, but I'm not the expert. You're now going to have for 5 minutes much more of an expert than me to give you a warm welcome and set the scene. His name is Martin Harper, and he is Regional Director of BirdLife Europe and Central Asia, and he's going to kick me off the stage. A warm, you can clap if you like, I feel you should. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, and lovely to see you in the room and online. As Katrina said, it's been Ocean Week since the 8th of June, and it's been an opportunity really to not only highlight the risks and threats that the marine environment face, but also to celebrate the wonder of our marine environment and its biodiversity. And yes, we've been talking a lot about threat and the problems that our marine biodiversity faces. But today, actually, we're going to be talking about one of the most straightforward problems, which is affecting a huge number of species, but really we ought to be fixing. And as Katrina says, bycatch is one of those issues where the conservation community and the fishers are united. Nobody really wants to catch species which we're not going to end up eating. So sadly, huge number of seabirds, of sharks and rays, of sea turtles, marine mammals die each year. And the numbers are horrendous. So we're still talking about more than 200,000 seabirds a year in European waters. We're talking about 44,000 sea turtles just in the Mediterranean. We're talking about something like 10,000 common dolphins just in the Bay of Biscay. And if you wanted to go global, well, 100 million sharks and rays are killed each year through bycatch. So this is madness. At a time when we should be looking to recover the natural world, we're still causing that extent of needless harm. Now, as Katrina says, this has been one of those issues we have known about for a very, very long time, but it's taken us a while to make progress. And I have to say, the EU is not doing great. So BirdLife International has actually formed the Albatross Task Force, which is a global transcontinental program, back in 2004. And of course, albatross, as many of you know, they're really suffering from bycatch as well. Something like 300,000 a year die from bycatch. But we've shown that it is possible, by working with the fishing community, by working with the national administrators and the regional fisheries bodies, to reduce bycatch to a tiny level. In the South African and the Namibian fleets, we've seen bycatch come down by over 90%. And that's the sort of impact we want to be having in European waters. So I used to work with a guy who spent 10 years just getting the Seabird Action Plan. So it took 10 years just to get the first one. And when it was published in 2012, we thought, great, this is it. We're going to start getting the implementation. But when my colleague stood up last year, online of course, when we had Ocean Week last year and talked about bycatch, we'd assessed most of the actions that are in that plan and they weren't being implemented. Now, yes, now we've got a commitment under the EU Biodiversity 2030 strategy to produce a new fisheries plan which will cover all taxa, and we hope that's going to be the new momentum for change. But the frustrating thing is that in many cases, for many fishing fleets, we know the solutions. Not in all of them, but some of them we do. So we should be rolling them out. Unfortunately, in other areas, we do have problems in terms of data availability. And we need to put lots more effort into trying to ensure that that data is put into the hands of decision makers so we can target action. But that is not a justification for no action. And it is possible, as we've shown elsewhere around the world, to pilot and test mitigation techniques to reduce bycatch while improving data availability. So all of that is something we hope and expect will be happening over the coming months. And given the complexity of so many other problems that our marine biodiversity faces, this is one of those ones where I really feel as though we ought to be making impact really quickly. So I'm absolutely delighted that this afternoon we are going to be putting a spotlight on the solutions. I hope that they are going to be inspirational to all of us in the room or online, because we need all of us to be redoubling our efforts so that we can find bycatch to the history books. And we also then do actually deliver what I believe the EU wants, which is to minimise but hopefully eliminate bycatch in EU and non-EU waters. And with that, back to Katrina.
Thank you. I was going to ask you a question, actually. We can't go too far because camera-wise, you see, we have to stay very close. We're allowed to. It's very strange still that we can actually stand within 1.5 meters of each other. It wasn't because I think you're weird or anything. I just said it's very strange. So a question there, just because you used very, how do I say it, very pertinent words. You said it's just straightforward. We ought to be fixing it. It's madness. You talk data. I think these good people in the room, and maybe I will just ask who they are in just a moment, will know that there are issues like awareness, issues like funding, issues like training, issues like all sorts of things. If you had to wave a magic wand, knowing what all those, and it is straightforward, what do you want? What do you say, Kat, this is what I want to see, because it should be achievable. This is where we need to focus.
Yes, I think the four big themes really, and others will have views on this, are there needs to be more of an obligation. Now you can define what obligation means, whether it's regulatory underpinned or not. Accountability for those actions, particularly if we've got a plan of action, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be frequent progress reports, monitoring and evaluation, and yes, there will need to be funding. The experience that we've had is around the world that when the funding comes, when you can work alongside fishers, when you can demonstrate there are solutions, when you can communicate that back to legislators so they can basically mandate the reduction of bycatch, and you can convince that at a regional seas level, all of that can deliver you change. So obligation, accountability, progress reporting, finance.
Oh, I'm scribbling. And as though that may solve everything. No, thank you so very much. And also, just for you to say, you were citing where you've done work, and you were saying, I think you were giving an example of South Africa and other areas. So the biggest difference, I mean, I know, but I would like you to articulate it between you achieving what you could do there and what you say, you know, it's not good that Europe is lagging behind, is not doing as it should. What's the biggest difference for you? Why is it working there and not working there?
Well, there will be other people in the room better equipped to answer that than me, but my guess, and because I was asking this question earlier myself, is that there are other demands on the fishing community from the EU and from the national legislation, and it is possible that over dealing with things like discards, that's basically perhaps taken more of a priority than some of these other issues.
Okay.
And I think that's something we need to think about. So how do we make it easy for fishers to do the right thing? And when we legislate and when we mandate, how do we make it easy so that they can reduce discards, so that they can reduce bycatch, and so that essentially we can all together try and restore the seas?
Okay, thank you very much. You are allowed to sit. Oh, one more thing. No, I'm joking. You are actually allowed to sit down. Should have left that. So I will just say, because we are joined by our lovely speakers from the Commission and from the Parliament, please obviously feel free. And I want to just say that the organisers of this event tried very hard to get somebody from DG Mare. As you can imagine, they are incredibly stretched. I want to be clear. We have a lovely gentleman, I personally find him a lovely gentleman, from DG Environment, who is going to be on this panel. So you are not second choice, Umberto. You are absolutely not, but I want to be very, very clear on that. So maybe if you have a microphone, can I just find out, for the benefit of our speakers, it's a small event, can we just see who a couple of our audience are? I don't know if you've got, or do I have? Here, I can do it. Who would just tell me who they are, who's not a speaker, because it's nice. No, you're terrified, aren't you? Go on, just say where you're from. Yeah, I'm not asking you anything personal, just your name and the organisation you represent, that's all. And I'm sorry, I'm not in Vision now. I'm in Vision, I'm back. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dorothée Guinéeux. I work for BirdLife Europe.
Okay, who does not work from BirdLife Europe and can tell me who they are in this room? Should we pass it over to the other side? There we go, the gentleman in the striped. Oh, go ahead.
My name is Annemarie Svoboda, and I'm from the Netherlands. I work for the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality there. And for the last 2 years, I've been working on setting up a live project on Bycatch called Seabird with 13 other countries. So I'm very interested in today.
Okay, thank you. And I'm very aware that our online audience can't see our on-site audience, but I hope that you can hear them. It just gives us a feel for who they are. Who else wanted to say? Yes.
It's me. Hi, hello everyone. I'm Marta Silvia Viganò from DW, Deutsche Welle, Germany's international broadcaster.
Okay. The gentleman, couple more. This lovely gentleman here on this side. I'm being fair.
Thank you. Lovely lady. Who are you?
Who am I?
Yes.
Oh, I'm Katrina.
Hi, Katrina.
Hello.
Pleased to meet you.
And you.
My name is Jacques Boucher. I am a philanthropy advisor. I'm the former COO of an organization called the European Foundation Center, now called Philea.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm especially glad and proud to be here because I'm a philanthropy advisor to the LIFE platform, the Low Impact Fisheries, and whose speaker, of course, is Brian. He's going to speak a bit later.
Hence you chatting, so you got your beady eyes on him. Okay.
Well, I have indeed,
nice
but on the others
eyes.
as well.
Gentle beady eyes.
Okay.
One more in the back row, and then we will move on, because I know that Raphael here has to be out of this room by 25 to 6, and we need to hear from you before that, don't we? Last one. Who's last there?
I'll be very brief. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Gosney. I'm the UK, the Fisheries Attaché at the UK mission to the EU, just a couple of doors down.
Oh, wow. That can't
Nice
be
to
a
meet you all.
hard job. That can't be an easy job.
It's been a difficult few years, but
Okay.
yeah, we're getting there.
We won't even go into that. Okay, so I'm going to move on now. If we can show the lovely, who our speakers are, that would be just really helpful. Okay, so there they all are. I'll say a few words, but not now. What I will say to these lovely people, because it was a good tip given to me by BirdLife, if you can avoid any big acronyms, or at least explain your acronyms, I'd be very, very grateful, okay, in the course of your presentations. We've got 3 presentations, then we're going to have a panel discussion. For all of you good people in the room, if you have a question, you raise your hand. Please keep it super short. For all of you lovely people online, your option is to put a very, very Morse code length question into the YouTube live stream. Our BirdLife team will curate them and we will see them on this screen here. And of course, anybody at any time can tweet #EU Ocean Week. Right, we have a trio of opening speakers. Can I ask the first to join me? His name is Dr. Anis Zarouk. He is project manager. Where are you? Oh, you took your time, didn't you? Voila. I'll probably need the microphone back, actually. My God, the poor technicians really are probably cursing me for all of this movement everywhere. So I just said, no acronyms, but you are project manager at, I think everybody knows, UNEP-MAP SPA-RAC, so the Mediterranean Action Plan, this platform for regional cooperation for specially protected areas. But you are also working a lot, you're a BirdLife partner in the Mediterranean, and I think you're going to share with us a project that you've worked on. Yeah, and the project mainly specializing in mammals. It's not seabirds, isn't it?
It's multi-taxa bycatch, so it's several species at the same time, which is something also new in the approach.
Okay, so you will need to keep that super, that's better, and the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, and quite happy to be here, and thank you, BirdLife, for the invitation. So you'll share today this initiative we started 6 years ago, which is called the Bycatch project, and this is, we don't see the, okay, so the third thing, maybe everyone is asking why bycatch is happening and why we have these vulnerable species catch by fishers. So the simple reason is that the fishers go to the sea to catch some target species, but unfortunately this is also where the ecosystem, we have also sea turtles, mammals, seabirds, a lot of species. So guess what is happening when the fish is growing, when the fishers are coming here and trying to count these species. So there are two options. You can have bycatch, or we, and I mean fishers, scientists, decision makers, consumers, and many other stakeholders can mitigate bycatch, and we will see how this is possible and how we can keep these species there. So let's try with a small interview we succeed to do with the fisher, but also with the sea turtle. And the first question was, is the Mediterranean Sea and its coastline important to sea turtle? And of course, the both was saying, absolutely, of course, it's important for both of us. And the second question is if the Mediterranean Sea and its coastline important to fishers. And there, unfortunately, both was saying not anymore. So it was, but not anymore. And one question only for the sea turtle. If one day you are caught at sea, do you prefer it as a shark or a fisher? And he was saying a fisher. And why? You were asking why? Because he can choose to release me alive. And here come our role as stakeholders to mitigate bycatch. So what makes the Bycatch project so specific? Because we are implementing this in 5 different countries in the same time with the same approach. I mean, Turkey, Morocco, Italy, Croatia, and Tunisia. We are doing a multi-taxa approach, so we are not trying to find a solution only for sea turtle or sea mammals, or for seabirds. We are talking about seabirds, sea turtles, marine mammals, coral and sponges, even so the habitats, and shark and rays, of course. And what makes really this project quite particular, that we are working all together, I mean national, international institutions, national, international NGOs, and we succeed to have something quite particular. It's not just a team, it's mainly a family. We call this a family of bycatch. So what is new in these projects? So first thing, we all collect data, but that data was not standardized. So the first thing to standardize the data, they have the same approach and have all this data collected in the same location. And this makes us a huge data collected in the 5 countries. We trained a lot of observers, but also several stakeholders and fishers. We have key findings. The first one is that the sea turtles are the second main bycatch taxa, and fortunately shark and rays are the most bycatch taxa in the Med. Other thing is that on understanding of interaction with vulnerable species, we know that at which depth this is happening, which area, which season. So the occurrence according to the fishing gears. This is our new findings. The link with funding also was monitored in this project. And also finding even on the behavior, how fishers are reacting anytime the bycatch is happening. And it's completely different from fishing gear to another, from small-scale fisheries to trawlers. And something quite important for us, how we will trust, how we succeed to get fishers working with us. It is thanks to the trust we got through the Observer program. And this all led us to the science-based mitigation measures that allowed us to test with fishers multi-taxa bycatch measures. We also had this very positive momentum right now in the Med. We have already the GFCM 2030 strategy adopted. We have the post-SABIO 2020 SABIO adopted, but also national strategies that are now ongoing thanks to this project in the involved countries. Something quite important, observers. It's a new métier in the fisheries. There were no observer of bycatch before this project started, and these people are living with the fisher, reporting data, but also helping them to understand and found solution. And we'll come back later to this in the questions. Something else which is quite important, it seems a detail, but it's important to make all these tools available at local level, at local language. So anytime we have something, we provide it to the fisher in the local language, and they are more involved and more working with us. Something else which is quite important, to try to promote. Anytime you have someone that is quite involved, to promote it. So these fisher were with us in some documentaries. We have also the Villa movie about bycatch, and going to the fora, to the UN meeting, to the BirdLife meeting, and they are sharing their experience. And this makes that other fisher want to follow and also do this. This nice draw is something that we are proud to do it, because it's a fisher that in Tunisia recently proposed us to decorate his boat with this draw, because he wants to be an example for the other fisher, because he started mitigating bycatch. And he was one of the most fisher targeting sharks and rays, and he's not anymore targeting this species. So it's a very nice story to tell to other fisher that we can make a change. So how the science-based mitigation measures began in this project, and this is something quite important. Already we have this very, very relevant studies we succeed to do as a family of med bycatch. So the first one is all the data on bycatch up to now of the 20 years in the med, but the other one, all the solution, worldwide solution to mitigate bycatch, and any country can select which one can work better for us. But in this project, we also tried, and we are testing, and these tests are still ongoing, several mitigation measures for pelagic longlines, for demersal longlines, for static nets, for trawlers, and even for pure seiners. So we are targeting both bottom and pelagic fisheries. And you see, unfortunately, elasmogrons and sea turtle are the most bycatch taxa, and that's why we are targeting these species. So let's go in one detail. And I'm taking the case of Tunisia. And I know that we are focusing more in Europe, but indeed, we are talking about mobile species. This species doesn't care if it is happening in Africa, it's happening in Europe. They are mobile species. And it's important to know that some countries sometimes, like Tunisia, are facing a double issue. They are a nursery of this species, but they have a lot of fishers to deal with. So we need to find a solution. The first one was the trawlers. And thanks to the monitoring, we discovered, and we proved it's better, that below 15 meters, the bycatch decrease. So it's just an application sometimes of the regulation, of existing regulation. If you monitor that the regulation is well applied, you will decrease already the bycatch. Something else, this is called the Garrasia. It is a static net that is targeting the commercial shark species. So it is targeting sharks and rays, but unfortunately we have also bycatch of sharks and rays, but mainly sea turtles. And here again, you see the result that mortality, unfortunately, is decreasing and increasing, with the depth. So we already have the data. Spatiotemporal measures with these static nets can really decrease the bycatch. We just need to select at which depth, which season, we need to use these techniques. So here again, another mitigation measures. We just change the behavior to not put the net for 24 hours, to put it only for 12 hours. And see that the result is just for sea turtles, see the mortality. 24 hours, you have most of the sea turtles already dead. So with 12 hours, they are alive, and fisher can release them alive. So this is a simple mitigation measure, but it is working. Another thing with the bottom long lines, we just change the bait, using different species, and we saw that with the mullet, you can have the same target species for fishers, but decreasing a lot the bycatch. And another thing, we are now targeting another technique, which is the fishing gear modification. We found a way even for the trawler, and we are still working with tests. We start with the scientific vessel, and now we are starting with fisher. So that allow to both sea turtles, sharks, but even macroliter to escape from the trawling. And the fisher continue to catch what they want. So this is something we are now testing, and we are even trying to replicate it in Morocco. So to the end, this is to finish how to mitigate bycatch in the future. So it's not just a fishing gear modification, spatiotemporal measures, it's mainly collaboration. It's thanks to this bycatch family that we are having this project results, because this family includes decision maker, it includes fishers, it includes everyone, all of us. Everyone have a role, can play a role to mitigate bycatch. And these two are very good examples. We already did a very beautiful documentaries with them. These are fishers that start giving example to others that are committed to reduce bycatch, and they are already doing this. And they are talking to other fishers to do the same. So that's why I'm saying we need to promote this, we need to raise the awareness. It is something quite important to mitigate bycatch. And thank you.
Thank you. Actually, who managed to read through those quotes? They were actually very moving, the quotes at the end. Who managed? So based upon that, because I think you had a quote from an observer there, and you made a feature of the observers, just reiterate, how important was it to have them for both the data collection sites, to have them for data collection and also for mitigation? But just to be clear for me, they are people who are already familiar in the domain. They're either fishers, or they're fishers within fishers' families, or they're scientists, or they're volunteers. Who are they, and how important was it to have them?
So observers, bycatch observers, are all this in the same time.
Okay.
So we really wanted all people to be involved. So we have scientists, we have even fishers working as observers, and they are making the link between what was missing. I mean, scientists and fishers, decision maker and fisher. Yeah. These people just came, they are just observing, not controlling, which is completely different. They are on board, or they are at board, just taking data, talking with fishers, passing days and days in the boat, living with them, and reporting to us all this data, the behavior, what fishers think, what fishers do. Okay. And thanks to that big team in the 5 countries, we have a huge data. I can tell you that we have more than 2,000 fishers involved in this project with us, thanks to these observers. Okay. And they even did some mentoring of some fishers, and we are getting a lot of results. It's thanks to them. I mean, this project will not exist without fishers and observers, and that's why it's quite important. It's a new métier, and I'm happy that we are also starting a database of observers for the Med. Okay. So in the future, if someone will need an observer, they are already trained, because they were not, and they know how to do and how to deal with bycatch. Right,
so there's that missing, you've filled that gap. Thank you. I have many more questions, but it's not for me to ask them now, because I need to crack on, and please hold your thoughts. So if you have a question, there is a panel discussion afterwards. You are absolutely welcome to pose it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Katrina.
There we go. So thank you very much for breaking the ice. So the second of our opening trio of presenters, please join, is Ana Almeida. She is a Marine Conservation Officer at SPEA. SPEA, as in the Portuguese Society for the Study of Birds, also a BirdLife partner in Portugal. So literally your daily work is to protect Portuguese birds and the habitats they depend upon as well. And just to be clear, why is Anna here? Just to be clear, you've been in SPEA's team since 2015, and she's been working in the assessment of seabird bycatch through the implementation of onboard observation programs and also the design and trial of mitigation measures, but under different national and international projects. So she's going to share, as I said, some of those solutions and some of those outcomes with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the ones who are with us today. So I will talk you through some of the work that we have been developing at SPEA in Portugal to tackle seabird bycatch. So just as a first context, Portugal is in a really nice located for seabirds, because we are in the middle of a very important migration route for birds. And at the same time, we have a very productive coast with lots of upwelling. So it's also an important place for fisheries as an economic activity. We have a very active fishing fleet made of mostly small-scale fisheries. With the polyvalent license, which means that vessels operating different fishing gear. And we are also fish consumers. So we are on the top 5 of the world with the highest fish consumption per capita per year. So this spatial and temporal overlap of fisheries and seabirds caused bycatch. And the definition was already given. This is just examples of bycatch, and why this problem is also very relevant, because seabirds are the group of birds more threatened of all, and also because seabirds are excellent sentinels of the health of our oceans. So if they are facing declines, they are giving us signs that something is not going well. This is just an example of a bycatch event for the ones who never saw it happening. This is a small-scale longline, demersal longline, close to Berlenga's Special Protection Area, which is the island that was in the horizon. And the target fish is sea bass, and they are catching a northern gannet, which is the most bycaught species, and this is still alive, which happens very frequently from our data. Half of northern gannets are caught alive, so they still have a chance to be released. That's why it's also important to raise awareness about handling seabirds with fishermen, and to develop more studies on the survival rate of birds bycaught alive. We started working with seabird bycatch in 2010, so 12 years ago. We did the first characterization of the problem at a national level, and more recently we focused our efforts in the Berlenga's SPA, because it's a very important place for seabirds. And during around 5 years, we did this huge effort, observation effort, with onboard fishing observers and also with questionnaires. And all this information allowed us to conclude that the most problematic fishing gears are demersal longline and gill nets. And the most problematic species are northern gannet, cory shearwater, shags and cormorants, and other species, but in smaller numbers. The work that we did allowed us to estimate that every year 20,000 northern gannets are captured only in Berlenga's SPA. So after we collected all this massive information and knowing which was the problem, we were ready to start working on the solutions, on mitigation measures. And what we were looking for measures that were cheap, so easily accessible from fishermen, that were easy to operate, that do not impact their target catch, and that reduce seabird bycatch, and ideally other groups of species such as cetaceans and sea turtles. Along this way, we trialed different mitigation measures, such as modified hooks, contrast panels, LED lights, and during those trials, we learned that there are some points that you should respect and put your effort, which is the engagement of the fishing communities from the first moment of the projects. It's the creation of an active and open channel of communication, and to take time to create solid and trust relationships with all stakeholders involved. And now I want to show you just one example of one of the mitigation measures that showed most successful. We call it Scary Bird device. It's actually a kite. It's a replica of a bird of prey, and the objective is to scare birds away from the fishing area. So when we trial mitigation measures, we always do paired trials with control and experimental to understand what we are assessing. And we also do social economic assessment of the measure. We trial this Scary Bird device in 2 different fishing gears, in the long line, where it sits in the water, and in the gill net vessels. And the results were very promising, as I told you. So this is just a very quick summary of the results. But the boats that had the experimental trips with the Scary Bird device showed that birds keep away from the fishing area, away from the 20 meters band around the vessel. And this with particular importance for gulls, northern gannets, and Balearic shearwater, which is the most threatened seabird in Europe. Also, the results, the Scary Bird device is quite cheap, and we did interviews, and fishermen accepted quite well because it doesn't interfere with their work, it doesn't need a lot of maintenance, and it scares birds away. In the case of Balearic shearwater, we concluded that 60% less birds are interacting with the fishing gear, which is a fantastic result. This is just to show you an example of a fact sheet about the Scary Bird device. It's in Portuguese, but it's just to show you that we produced this to reach more fishermen than the ones that were actively collaborating in the project. And with this information, they should be able to use the Scary Bird device by themselves with the technical details, and also with some good practices that they can adopt on board that already make a difference besides the mitigation measure. So looking into the future, this is just a very quick summary of our work, but I'm happy to answer all your questions afterwards. But just in a nutshell, we are already implementing mitigation measures in an eco-labeled fishery in Peniche, in the same area. We are also trialing other mitigation measures because we know from the work we developed that these measures are really specific with fishing gear and with the seabird species. So we are trialing some others, such as acoustic deterrents in the south of Portugal. We are also working a lot in encouraging self-reporting and with training and raising awareness programs with the fish, not only with the fishing communities, but for example with training centers, the authorities that train fishermen to go into the sea. And we are working closely with the Portuguese government in the development of a Seabird Bycatch National Plan of Action. This is it from me. Just we have now at SPE a crowdfunding campaign focused on Bycatch, just launched on the 8th of June. So if you want to know more, you can visit this webpage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Out of interest, how did you come to be so passionate about seabirds? What was your moment?
I studied marine biology in Algarve, which is not only a place for going on holidays during summer. And all my colleagues studied dolphins or fish or aquaculture. But I had a teacher who invited me to go and do some bird watching. And that was it. And then I worked with a fantastic seabird called Little Tern in Algarve. Yes. I did field work, and after that I was conquered. And because seabirds are amazing, because they conquer the three environments, sea, land and ocean.
Yeah, I loved how you put it. I heard somebody next to me responding that. You said they're the sentinels of the ocean. They tell us stuff. That's what, absolutely. Before you move on and before we invite our last speaker, the lovely Brian there, just to say, when we chatted before this, and to be clear for everybody, it is complex, isn't it? Because with these various mitigation measures, you were saying, you know, Kat, there is absolutely a call for more data. Everybody agrees on the importance of data, particularly from small-scale fishers, but some in Portugal, they're not obliged to have VMS, some don't fill in logbooks, we heard there that the vessels are polyvalent, so there's the license for different gears, they don't actually have to declare, they're less monitored, so that in itself is complex. How do you how do you move forward on that, and also within this context of trust and very open communication, which you were hot on?
I think there's two very important things. One is to act in a combined approach where we have already data, go into action, and don't expect that we have the perfect data for the entire country for all the SPAs. So you can start implementing the Scary Bird device in this fishing fleet with some recommendations, and then collect data in the areas where we don't have enough data. And at the same time, I think my colleague said what I think it's the crucial point, which is work together. Because this bycatch problem, at least in Portugal, is separated in different ministries, people from the environment, people from fisheries, NGOs, scientists, fishing communities. And I think if we don't work together to be creative, sometimes it's to be creative, to think out of the box, to make fishermen adopt measures, and to go outside our comfort zone of biologists. I think that will be the way to tackle this problem. Along with all the other things that you already mentioned, such as funding.
Thank you very much. Again, hold that thought if you have questions for Anna. Thank you so very much. So I think somebody wanted to clap there. I heard it, or maybe not. Maybe not. Yes, thank you. All right, so Brian O'Riordan. O'Riordan? Yeah? O'Riordan, why that? Yeah, why did I say O'Riordan? I can't speak anymore since COVID. Look, he's got his beady eyes on you. Now he thinks I'm rubbish. Well, Brian O'Riordan is Executive Secretary of, he's giving me the thumbs up, the Low Impact Fishers of Europe. So the LIFE platform, it's a pan-European platform of both national and local level organisations. It's the small-scale fishers who are very committed to fishing in a low-impact manner. So this is all about, I mean, he'll tell you more, you know, small-scale fishing fleets that are really micro or nano, so they're family-owned, so it's the families who are going out every day on a daily basis. They represent around 70% of the active European fleet. And you have been working more than 50 years in fisheries sectors around the world, and you're only 21, Brian. How did you do that? I don't know. Please come to the stage. You can give him a warm round of applause. Thank you very much.
I think you should get a round of applause for the introduction. Well, after the introduction like that, what can I say? First of all, good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to be here, and a big thank you to BirdLife for organizing this meeting. I'll get straight on with the slideshow. So first of all, this afternoon, I'm going to say who LIFE is and what we do. The interaction between small-scale fisheries and the threatened, endangered, and sensitive species, how these can be reduced, and finally, what LIFE is actually doing in this field of fishing without bycatch. Katrina gave a very nice introduction, so thank you. No need to spend a lot of time here other than to say LIFE is a representative body, professional organization. That's to say we represent our members to ensure that they are getting their rights and engaging in the decision-making processes. We're also an advocacy group. We're advocating for fair share of the fishery resources and access to fishing grounds for our members. But we're also working at the grassroots level with our members because we feel that fishermen can be actors of change in their own right if given the chance, and we would like to see more co-management of fishing zones. This is another key, I think, to bycatch mitigation. It was mentioned by the last two speakers. Collaboration and co-management is all about collaboration between managers and fishers as managers. And also, fishers can make a difference. They are putting food on the table, they're bringing fish to our plates, they're catching it as far as possible in a low-impact way. I think you all know what low-impact fishing is. Using the right gear, in the right place, at the right time. It's complex. As Anna pointed out, it's diverse. It's seasonally specific. It's really specific to particular areas, to fishing grounds, and to the way the fish move. So controlling it is complex. LIFE has an office in Brussels where I work, linking with the European institutions, but I have two colleagues, one in the Baltic and one in the Mediterranean, where we have coordination offices, and we have consultants and staff members who work closely with those coordination offices to provide on-the-ground service to our fishers. Last but not least, we're a smallish organization staff-wise, although we have roughly 35 member organizations and 10,000 fishers. We're a relatively small organization, so we're seeking to build synergies and collaborate with organizations such as BirdLife to try and make a difference. So fishing without bycatch. Interaction between fishing and sensitive species, threatened species, is not a new phenomena. It's basically a failure of fisheries management. But one of the problems with fisheries management is it's not always clear who's responsible. Is it the environmental agency? Is it the fisheries agency? Which fisheries authority? So this is something which needs to be resolved if we're going to fish without bycatch. It's not a new problem, but it's particularly acute today. Why is it so acute today and so important today? Well, I think there is a problem of overfishing, of acute pressure on resources, and fishermen are finding resource scarcity. The birds, the marine mammals, and the sea turtles are caught up in nets because fishers are perhaps fishing in areas where they haven't fished before in the past. And the predators, the seabirds and the marine mammals, are seeking out opportunities to catch fish in the fishing nets, particularly the static gear nets. It's an economic and a social problem with ethical implications, and this complicates fisheries. It's a very emotive issue. And the bycatch is a real problem for fishermen. It undermines the viability of their fishing operations. It can be extremely dangerous. Catching large marine mammals and seabirds in your gear is not something you want to do. And also, by undermining the viability of fishing, it puts the next generation of fishers off. Fishing is increasingly a sunset industry. It's very difficult to get new people to come in. Right gear, right time, right place. We're also dealing with towed gears, active gears, passive gears. So there are no silver bullets. We need tailored solutions. We're also dealing with a variety of different animals that get caught. So LIFE's approach is, first of all, to promote collaboration between fishers and scientists. Fishers have a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of traditional knowledge as well as experiential knowledge, and this is often not used in fisheries management or in bycatch mitigation. We want to promote jointly arrived at solutions, and we want to have exchanges between fishers so that they can share their knowledge about solutions. So the first example I want to give is a technical project we worked on in the Baltic Sea with the Marine Research Institute in Poland and the Swedish Agricultural University. The fishermen experience particular problems with seal predation and cormorant predation. This was to look at seal predation, and it was inspired by work going on in Canada with cages. And it was particularly successful. It has the advantage of keeping the fish alive, protecting the fish from the seal, so the fish, if not wanted, can be released back into the water unharmed, and the seals don't get caught in the gear. Since 2018, LIFE has been working as a partner to the MAVA program under Phase 1, quantifying and qualifying the fisheries cetacean interactions, particularly in the Almeida Sea, which is particularly important for the movement of cetaceans in and out of the Mediterranean. It's been a mapping exercise to the extent to which predation is a problem. We developed a technique which we call floating laboratories, where scientists are not actually observing on the fishing boat, but they're following the fishing boat in an accompanying vessel, and they watch what's happening on the fishing boat, the level of interaction with the cetaceans, and how the fishermen engage in reducing these interactions. Phase 2, we're working with, sorry, I've got the wrong slide here. There's an error here. It's the ACOBAMS, not the ASCOBAMS. The ASCOBAMS, of course, is the agreement on small cetaceans in the Baltic and Atlantic. The ACOBAMS is the agreement on cetaceans in the Mediterranean, where we're working with other project partners. It's a 28-month project. It's coming to an end in October, where we're going to produce the results. It's basically testing solutions, it's seeking solutions, it's trying to harmonize data collection and engage fishers in self-monitoring, and we hope that we'll be able to make recommendations on socioeconomic and technical measures to reduce this interaction and harm to the cetaceans. So thank you very much.
Thank you. One question to you before I invite everybody to the stage. I think you said it yourself, bycatch is as old as fishing. Why has it become such a pressing issue? And I was asking Martin at the beginning, you know, you've sort of said the EU is behind, and I think one of the people will have different views. There is a big focus on discards. There are all sorts of other reasons. Why is bycatch such a pressing issue now, in a nutshell, for us?
There was one statement made by our first speaker which posed question to a turtle and a fisherman whether the Mediterranean Sea is important for fishing, and the answer was no. But I would disagree with that. The answer is less. The answer is yes. The Mediterranean Sea may be less important than the Northwest Atlantic, but the Mediterranean Sea is one of the oldest fishing areas in the world. It's certainly the oldest fishing area in Europe. Mm-hmm. The fishing traditions go way back to pre-Roman civilization, but there are less fish there. Mm-hmm. So the cetaceans are predating more, they're learning more. Right. Our experience with cetacean interaction is that the parents are communicating to their young that the fishing net is a source of food. And even when you put pingers on the net, they may avoid the pingers to start with, but particularly, but these pingers become like dinner bells. They bring the cetaceans in. Dog. So the bycatch species, the birds, the marine mammals, not necessarily the turtles, but they learn quickly because their prey species are less abundant. Okay. So there are more interactions going on, which means greater bycatch.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Hold that thought for any questions. Without delay, I need to get everybody else up because you've got a plane, train, something to catch. Bicycle, hopefully a bicycle, your own two legs. All right, so can I please invite back our two previous speakers plus our other lovely speakers who you can see here. Take a seat, and why don't you grab some water just so that you can have that, and I promise you those seats are more comfortable than they look. Can somebody kindly take the mic as well? Here is another microphone, because you have two to share between you. Nobody wants to sit next to me, I see. Fine, I don't care. So can I just say who we also have? Here we have, from the Commission, the Director of National Capital at DG Environment, Umberto Delgado Rosa. We also have from, oh, it's you. You're going to sit next to me. Thank you. I'm not afraid. I'm actually afraid of you, though. From the European Parliament, MEP for the Greens, a member of the Committee on Fisheries, and former Vice Chair of the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, and also the Intergroup on Animals, currently. Yeah, okay. Francisco Guerrero, and we also have this lovely gentleman here, Rafael Centenera. He's a technical advisor on marine biodiversity for the Spanish Ministry for Ecological Transition and the Demographic Challenge. Importantly, he's currently responsible for the implementation of the National Plan for the Reduction of Bycatch in Fisheries. A huge job, I would imagine. So what I'm going to do, and I'll start with you, sir, that would be good, is I thought you were going to shake hands there. No, you've taken the mic. I thought you were going to join hands and sing. I'm going to ask our three newcomers to just in 1-2 minutes tops, please, just to what you've heard, either on the bigger picture, you know it well, or your perspective on what you've heard, and then we'll get sort of round to some more questions. So let me give you a chance to lay out your stall. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, there are three really interesting presentations. There was one question I want to make to the two presentations on the Mediterranean. What can we do to finish with the drift net problem in the Mediterranean? Because 2 weeks ago we have a case of a humpback whale that was entangled on a drift net in the Mediterranean that at the end ends on the coast of Spain, a big problem. But also many dolphins and turtles and birds are landing in Spain because of the use of the drift nets. And that's something we are working with the good fishermen, but we still have this problem on the table. And that's one thing I want to ask you. Do you have any solution for that? How we can help the African countries and all the countries that are using those drift nets? It's a big problem that we have.
Okay. Do you want to? Yeah, please do. Thank you, Annick.
Well, thank you for the relevant question, because drift nets, but also all illegal fishing is unfortunately in the net. It's absolutely collapsing the stocks, it's making a lot of bycatch, and sometimes it's even making more pressure on this professional fishing. I mean, we are putting all on the hand of this fisher, but unfortunately there are other fishers that are doing this. I think that the solution should start by a socioeconomic study, because as far as I know, in the countries where these drift nets are still there, it's mainly for social reason, because some government tolerate drift net because in that region there are so difficulties that they allow them to use it. But unfortunately, this is the wrong decision, because you are collapsing your stock, you are degrading your ecosystems. And unfortunately, we are talking about, as I was mentioning, mobile species. So if it is happening there, it will impact all of us in the Med. So the first thing is to understand why fishers still use it, while there is other techniques. I know that, unfortunately, also, there are people still doing, and I mean, people bringing this drift net to the fisher. So they are not do it by themselves. They found it in the market, unfortunately. And here we have to make a look from where these drift nets are still coming. Because at least in North Africa, most of the fishing gear are not coming from North Africa. They're coming from other countries. And these countries still sell these drift nets. So the solution is starting from there. Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to keep it short, if I may, and I'm going to really try and do a kind of a brain box bingo here. Let me remind you if you have a question. I can't promise I'll take loads, but we have already had some. I'm going to wait there because they've come for you. Let me come to you first, actually. Why don't we hear, and what do you want to say? I'm going to give you free rein. Go on. I could ask you a million questions.
I have more than 1 minute. I have 1 minute and a half.
Go on, yeah. You have a couple of minutes. Go on, please.
Well, first of all, it was great to be here. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of information, and one thing that's popped up for me, it's the political will. For me, it's clear that we have the data to act on several species, on several areas, with the local community, with fishermen, with the scientists, with the NGOs. And so for me, as a politician, and I see this every day, unfortunately, is a political will. So we have the data, we just don't have the political will. At that level, I always say people should vote, should participate, should pressure their politicians to be more transparent, and so they know also what they are voting on. I know it's difficult because we have several levels, European level, national level, regional level, municipality level, and so that's a lot to take in. But as a citizen, I think that's more important for us to have more transparency on the way we vote and what we do as politicians that are elected to do something, and then on the citizens to take responsibility. There was something that was said about accountability. I think that should be more pressure also on politicians to deliver. On that part, I think it was a major topic. And the second point I would underline, that is the cooperation. For me, it's also as a citizen and as a politician, it's fundamentally relevant to work with the communities and to try to implement what is possible to implement. As it was said here, there are some techniques that can be applied now, even though we have to work at a regulatory framework that is plain field, and so. But that is another level. But we can act now, especially in member states, to act on certain type of species and to tackle bycatch. And we have to do it as politicians, as citizens, but working with the community, working with fishermen, trying to assess what is best at certain regions and with certain characteristics, and not doing the opposite. Sometimes we are at our offices, and I say this because I see this, and we are on our office and we don't look at the reality as it is. And so we try to assess everything, and then we are not working with the communities.
Okay, no, I love it. No, you can keep it. I'm actually going to come, but again, super short. This is brain box bingo, and then I'm coming to Umberto. Let's just stick with one issue now. Well, but either of you, on this political will issue and the wider political framework and the role of the EU. I know you are not DG Mare. You have said, but Kat, we speak with one voice, but I know you can't give us any specifics on the upcoming action plan. But what do you say in terms of the EU's role? The expectations for this action plan. Do you think that, the relationship with member states who really have to do a lot in this. Are you sufficiently hardcore? Because we've heard the words obligatory, we've heard the words accountability. Is the EU tough enough on member states in this context?
Let me say, I do think that the political context is now different, an outcome. There are several reasons for that, but one I wanted to highlight. Yes, the problem is an old problem, but it's increasing in scale for reasons others have tackled. But we also have increasing perception, including a public opinion, also politicians. First, we are facing a big extinction crisis caused by humans, and everyone can intuit that if these staggering numbers of bycatch go on, we can't really be sustainable, can we, including on fisheries? And I think this test of sustainability will become more and more relevant. Now, we also have this European Green Deal that kicked in. It remains the narrative irrespective of crisis from pandemics to the war. It has delivered a biodiversity strategy for 2030 that I honestly believe is the most ambitious Europe and the world has ever seen. And it tackles all ecosystems, all contexts, including the marine ones. Now, on biodiversity, why can we now, I believe, be different? I cannot anticipate what will be in the action plan, but I can refer that you can expect time-bound targets, you can expect more accountability and more monitoring. And why is that? Well, first of all, because the problem with biodiversity, as compared, let's say, with climate change, it's much easier to measure a ton of CO2 than ecosystem services, etc. But science is helping, and we, EU, are saying to the world, for the new global deal on nature, we need more monitoring, reporting, verification. So everything related to the biodiversity strategy and the action plan as a link with it, we'll have to have more of that, and I think that will be part of the difference. So let's say biodiversity strategy together with the action plan fisheries, the enforcement of the nature directives, and the upcoming nature restoration law that will also cover marine ecosystems. I do think it brings a new environment where people are more aware, and it's no longer that thing far out there in the sea, far from the eyes, far from the heart, because it's also much easier nowadays to know what happens anywhere. We have the technology, the smartphones, and the social networks for that.
So in the context of that, and saying, and just coming back to also how I asked, you know, what I asked at the outset, do you think therefore, because there are more targets, because there's more accountability, there is going to be more pressure on member states? Because that's the, yeah, let's do this. So we're going to just look at this area and then we'll move on to another issue. But let's just sort of sort this little bit out. And any questions, again, as I said, I will come to. So super short, please.
Yes, there is pressure towards abandoning the silo culture that often still exists. Fisheries administrations, environmental administrations don't speak enough among each other. They should do it more. So I couldn't agree more that having fishermen, NGOs, scientists, and all the sides of public administration together will be the key. And the pressure for the non-silo is more present.
Okay, you wanted to just, again, kind of brain box bingo, a quick response.
Yes, so more pressure, but then you have the strategies, you have the action plans, it's very beautiful, it's very important, yes, we are picking pace, but then you have the monetary part that is funding directly the contrary. In MFF, we have the financing, the so-called the subsidies that promote the bycatch and promotes harmful, they are called harmful subsidies, and I was the green shadow for the MFF report. And then you have also, you have the strategies, you have this vision, but then you have the incentive, the public money being financing industry and some types of fishing activities that are contrary to this vision. And also we see that in the common agriculture policy, for example. And so in one way, yes, we have the vision. Yes, we are making a huge effort. And we see the division, not the division, but the contradiction sometimes in several committees. For example, in ENVI committee is very progressive in several ways. The fisheries and agri is very conservative. And so, yes, it's positive in a way, but then the public financing is some of the times doing the opposite, and I think we should really solve it.
You need to get a better balance, because the funding is there. You said the funding is there, but sometimes there is this cognitive dissonance.
To make the regeneration of ecosystems, a lot of things, but it also funds, subsidizes fuels, subsidizes big industry, and in the end, well, it's public money.
There's a lack of coherence. and harm. Okay, can I just jump over? You may want to come back. Can I just jump over to Spain and just, in the light of that, this issue of, you know, political will, funding in the right place, just in a nutshell, talk to us about that action plan, where things are at, whether you see that the trust that is the heart of it, where does the training come in, where does the awareness raising come in, and is there some dissonance, you know, in terms of...
First of all, I have to say that there's the political will to do something.
In Spain.
At least I'm talking about Spain.
Yeah.
Because Environment Minister and Fisheries Minister has joined to make a national plan to tackle the problem. Spain is one of the biggest fishing countries in Europe. We have more than 8,000 vessels. We know that we have many problems, and we are now working to solve those problems. First of all, we start with set ambition in the Cantabrian Sea to solve the problems of the dolphins, and we have made a lot of efforts to understand the problem and to try to use new methods to avoid the catch of the cetaceans. But this is not a problem only of the cetaceans in the Cantabrian Sea. That's why we made this national plan. Mm-hmm. It's a plan with 7 different actions. First of all is to have a framework, legal framework, focusing on the bycatch. It's the first time. We are working on that. Okay. Second thing, we are going to have a dialogue with the fishermen, NGOs, and scientists to focus on the risk fisheries, where we know that we have problems. And then we are going to tackle the problem of the different fisheries with new regulations, new measures, and to try and test new possibilities. It's incredible, I didn't hear that question of the hawk, a fast hawk, to use it on the fisheries, and that's a good idea. But those things are going to be developed in the next 6 to 10 years maximum, so we can arrive to 2030 with no problems. I don't say no problems because it's impossible to avoid all the bycatch, but we are going to do the maximum to reduce the bycatch.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did you have a...
And the last thing is that we also we have put a lot of financing to study better the population of birds, seabirds, and cetaceans, and turtles. And we are now launching different campaigns to study the situation of all these species, because it's really important to know how is the size of the population to set the trigger where you have to reduce not to impact them. If you don't know how many turtles you have, you cannot know what is the level where you have to press the fishermen to go there.
Okay, so in this, and then I'm going to really be you've got eyes, people have got eyes moving, so I'm trying to pick up. One quick question. Of course, earlier this year, there were over 500,000 citizens signed a petition to demand action to stop thousands of dolphins from dying in fishing nets in the Bay of Biscay. The petition was handed actually to DG Environment as well, to the French, to the Spanish. I mean, do you think that within this national plan, you've got kind of the wind behind you, because you do have, I think we use the word emotive, you do have public pressure, you do have public awareness?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And also public, and also the European Commission has sent a letter saying, hey, you're not respecting fully the environmental legislation. And that's something we know we have to do, because I have been working 28 years in the fishery department, so I know very well the fishermen. And now I know they don't want to kill any protected species. They want to avoid them because they lose the bite, they lose the nets, and they lose the credibility. That's why we have the right momentum to move forward and to try to make our fisheries more sustainable. Not only in the stock that we are achieving that, but also in the ecosystem problems that we have.
Okay. Did you send that letter yourself, Umberto? No, I'm joking. You want to come back, and then I'm going to hear from the silent three. Well, say a moment. Can I just tell Brian what I'd like to hear from you? And then I'll come to Umberto. Hold on to the mic. You did say bycatch is a failure of effective fisheries management, and you said the thing is, in effective fisheries management, there's always that question, who is responsible? So because we're in that arena, and I think also Umberto would like to come back from the EU perspective, just can you pinpoint a couple of measures you think that should be included in the CFP to perhaps address those deficiencies? Or am I now swerving you down an avenue and you wanted to say something else?
No, I think that's a very, very good question.
You need to hold the mic there just so
yeah,
they can hear.
is that all right?
Yes, that's
it's
perfect.
a very good question. As has been explained a little bit, there is the CFP, which is the basic regulation which governs fisheries, but there's a whole new range of legislation coming in through the European Green Deal, decarbonisation, climate neutral by 2050, biodiversity strategy, within which there is the action plan. These are not actually part of the CFP, but they form different policy planks, if you like. So, without wanting to dodge the question, I think the circle is being squared in a way that the CFP only goes so far. The CFP has basic objectives, and it sets out to achieve those objectives, which are environmental, fundamentally, MSY, they're economic, good quality of life, profitability for the fishing sector, and they're social. So there is a social dimension as well. But this really doesn't include the bycatch element or some other elements which have been touched on today. And I am optimistic that with the development of this action plan, it's obviously not going to solve all the problems, but it will go part of the way there. There was also the question raised by Mr. Centenara about the use of drift nets, how this problem can be stopped, and Anis gave a very good reply. But I think part of the problem in the fishing sector, we basically have two fishing sectors. We have a formal fishing sector, which is regulated. Fishermen buy licenses, they have quota, they have fishing seasons, and we have an informal sector. And the thing about the informal sector is that it operates under the radar. And there's a lot that goes on under the radar that fisheries authorities and other fishers don't have the capacity to control. So there are a lot of issues to deal with here, but one of the issues is the marketplace. We are, after all, European citizens. We're not just consumers. But there tends to be a treatment of fisheries that it's a marketplace. The market will deliver the product to the consumer because the consumer pays the right price. But this has led to a lot of informal activity, because one of the factors there is the price. So consumers often want to pay less for their fish. So I think it's very important, this issue of transparency throughout the value chain, not just focusing on fishing as an activity, but you need to have the whole value chain transparent. So market regulations, which are there and are coming in, I think is also an important area to look at.
Okay, thank you. I'll come to, I think you wanted to just pop in with a word, did you, for a while? And then I please come to you, because you have been quiet as a sphinx, and I would like to have your comments. And then let's see if there's just one or two questions from the floor. And I'm going to leave these sort of more questions for you, Anis, for towards the end, if I may. So, Umberto, thank you.
I wanted to add a word on this focus you had in this meeting on solutions, because I can put myself, I hope, in the shoes of a fisher, which has so many problems already to tackle. Of course, there's this unintended consequence of bycatch, but what can I do? So I just keep it going. But first, if the solutions exist, they are not expensive, and I think the very nice project of SPEA, which actually has won the Natura 2000 award for marine conservation. Congratulations, Anna. It can be upscaled. But the second point I want to do, and I'll finish with this, is for long it has been felt, I presume, both by part of fisheries administration and part by fishermen, okay, it's a problem, but they have bigger fish to fry. So not
Thank you for that. Thanks for that. It was quite good, wasn't it?
But it's a very big fish to fry because of public perception. People will not accept that these levels of killing of cetaceans, dolphins in the Bay of Biscay, and seabirds, etc., remain. And it's very important to also maintain the image of the sector, the credibility, as was said, and that needs a new approach to bycatch.
Okay, thank you. Anna, can I come to you, please? Well, oh, bless you. You're saying, yes, ask me a question. I just wondered what you were listening to. I mean, can I just say, as somebody coming outside the sector, although I obviously had the pleasure of moderating last year on this, when I hear all of that, and when I hear what we heard from Martin saying, well, it's straightforward, and it's madness, and there are solutions, and they're not tremendously costly, we know there's a question of trust. We've seen all of this with observers, and maybe you can answer that question on observers in a minute. I'm still trying to get to the nub of why we're not more progressed than we are. So no, I'm not, because that's negative. Let's look at, have we articulated all of the positives and the solutions going forward? That's what I want to know.
So you kept your difficult question to me.
I did. Do you know why? Because you're the only woman there, and I know you'd basically have the brain power to answer. There we go. Bams, bams. So, voila.
So just following all my colleagues here, what they said, I think that, I believe at European level there is the different way of thinking to this, with all the European Green Deal and all the current background. But thinking from a national perspective and seeing things on the ground, I think there's a huge gap between European level and then at member states in terms of implementation. And giving you just a rough example, as we were talking about funding, European Maritime Fisheries Fund, that is being discussed now, the next cycle of 6 years of funding. And if you read all the documentation at European level, it's well written, it's really ambitious in terms of sustainable fisheries. And when you look at our national program that was just sent to the European Commission to be approved, there's a really tiny, small piece of money for protecting marine ecosystems in the middle of the big bulk of money for all the rest, for all the rest that the EMFF covers. So from political side of things, I think there's a big gap between all the European recommendations and then the implementation and the following at the national level. For example, at the CFP level, we have the technical measures, which already include bycatch mitigation measures in some areas, but you have government fisheries observers. They don't know how to identify seabirds. They are like the ones who collect national data collection, the program of data collection, mandatory from European level, and they work with fish, but they don't know seabirds. For example, like SPEA as an NGO gave training for those fisheries observers to identify seabirds. Mm-hmm. So I'm talking about big challenge at implementation level. Okay. So I think... and maybe I can come to you again. So sticking at that national level... And also, can I just add something at the same time?
Oh, now you've got the mic. Now you're feisty. Now go for it.
I'm just saying, besides this gap between implementation at member state, I also think that we need the change of way of looking at things that we need in all nature conservation talking. And just to give you an example, we did a session with fishermen some time ago in a small place in Portugal. And instead of talking only about how many birds are killed, we choose to speak to fishermen about seabirds, about their lives. How many chicks they have, how many years they live, how many, and the fishermen were really engaged in the conversation, and they started to telling me how they caught birds when they were kids to eat before the Birds Directive. And I think we should engage fishermen from different points of view that we tend to use always, in addition to the more collaboration, but the control version of things. Because if they are engaged, truly engaged, so you need obligation, but it will be easier if we have them on board.
Let me hand the mic to you. I'm going to ask you a specific question, then perhaps we can come back to you and sort of perhaps you can respond to that on the member state level. So let me just stick with that to try and be concrete and to stick with this idea of solutions. We know there's lots of issues. We know it's complex. I have also heard that, fishermen want the majority to find solutions, not least because of the damage to their gear, but just from the point of view of we don't want to be doing this. We heard of the issues in the implementation. If you sort of could say, Kat, this is what I want to see at member state level for that political will to improve. You've touched upon it already, but no big power, just 3 things to push this on, what would they be at member state level, building on what Anna has said?
I would say a good action plan, that it was stated that it didn't have the maximum target that you can have for recovering ecosystems, for example. Then using that action plan to really make a change with the communities, so that approach not from a top-down, but more collaborative, but obviously listening to their perspective and trying to engage in a different way to trying to find solutions that already exist and you can be implemented, and other ones that can be brought up and have a solution to this problem and other problems. And then obviously talking about the economic impact and the consumption model. And I think that's a more paradigm shift than just policies, because we really need to rethink the way you said in your presentation that we are one of the biggest consumers of fish in the world, and so that's completely unsustainable if we make the translation of the modeling to other countries. This is impossible to manage, even with aquaculture. That's simply not feasible. So a different paradigm that also obviously comes from a political perspective to say, okay, we really need to gather all the data and say, okay, this is the real impact of us eating this kind of food. And if we look at the data and we internalize all the costs, well, we would not be eating as much fish as we do. We would not be funding certain types of sectors or some types of industries. And in that level, having an honest conversation with the citizens saying that, well, the data is there. We cannot consume as we consume. We really need to decrease consumption in some products, shift to others, and really internalize all the costs.
Do you think the sector is lagging a little? A very quick answer, and then I'm going to come to you because I know that your time is of the essence and there's a question here. But do you think that we're having that conversation much more in the agricultural sector than we are in the fisheries sector, this paradigm shift in terms of the way of consumption?
For sure, because I see it was a study that was the mega trends on agriculture sector, and it says that a lot of people are shifting to a more plant-based. It doesn't mean that you have to be vegan or vegetarian or whatever, but really decreasing the consumption of certain types of products that come from agriculture. But then this doesn't correlate directly for fisheries products. And so I think that's honest talk has to be made. So people in the end decide what they are consuming. But this is obviously conditioning by the purchasing power and the prices that you have in the market. And so that's why it's important to internalize all the costs.
Okay. For you, please. I mean, here, yes, of course, you've got the presidency coming up in 2023. Do you think you'll take the opportunity to promote member state implementation of the issue, particularly the EU action plan? And in the answering of that, I think it correlates with me asking you generally, you know, please respond to what you've heard.
Really, for us, what is important is that we can guarantee sustainable fisheries. Because for Spain, fisheries is really important. Imagine that is more than 8,000 vessels and 32,000 fishermen. That's why we want to implement this national plan. And also we're working with the Commission. If the Commission presents a European plan, for sure you're going to have Spain in front of it, because we understand that the fisheries should be sustainable. And the question of the dolphins in the Bay of Biscay has awakened everybody. Mm-hmm. What is happening here with the dolphins, and what is happening with the European seaweed, or Coryphena Mediterranean, and many other birds that are in problems. And that's why we want to push this. It has been a long discussion 1 year with the Fishery Department to arrive to a solution between both of us. And also we are starting in a few months with the fishermen to tackle real problems. And that's why we think if the European Commission produce a European plan, we will be there to help the European Commission to implement it.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to just, because I've been so rude to ignore you, I keep saying I'm coming to you and I haven't, and there's some questions for you, and then I'll come to you, Brian, because I would like to, we've looked at sort of the political side of things a little bit, the wider framework of the EU. We've looked a little bit at the member states and implementation. I'd like to look at a bit more about fisheries managers, and I've got a question for you, Brian, on that. But first of all, because this person's been very, well, very quickly, and I think because it's how did you go about sending the observers for the fishing trips? That obviously resonated, that just last a couple of days. How were the fishers with this? And how did the observers deal with this? Was it difficult? Did they bring enough gin and tonics on board? Did they know when to stay out of the way? Did they need their being sick tablets? No, I jest. But how was it? Because you really did describe this relationship.
Yes, but of course it was difficult. It was not easy to start.
Okay. So it was a good,
it was even challenging. All these partners I was mentioning at the beginning of my presentation, we didn't even know how to start with sending observers, training these observers, sending them to the fishers. And then I think one of the most important things was the message we were bringing at the beginning, and we still making this simple message. We are not just coming to protect sea species, sea turtles, seabirds. We are here to protect the fishers, because to mitigate bycatch, you have to take care of the fisher, you have to protect the fishers. Yeah. This is the strong message we were sending to them. And then we know that fishers start talking with each other. So if you are working in one area, everyone will know that this is happening there. So for us, in all these countries, we were targeting many fishing ports at the same time. So fishers start talking, okay, this is something happening. And these observers were not was not sent by the government. They were not controlling. So they start with testing some of them, and they saw, okay, they are talking with us. I know that now in fisheries we are using a lot of technologies, but I'm sorry, with a machine you cannot talk. And they were able to show what is really happening. They were showing this to some human being to see, you saw this sea turtle, how can I release it? He's so entrapped in the nets. See how much time I'm losing to do this. And then this start to happen. And that's why the trust come in the between. And since the trust was there, they were even calling the observers. I'm going out. Would you want to come? But there is something also quite important, that there are support from these 5 countries of the government. So they know that there will be a solution, and this solution will come from the fisher. It's a bottom-up approach. And they understood that this observer will be the ones that will bring this solution, because they are working with them. It was so important. Absolutely, it was difficult. And there is something that will come from this project which is quite useful. And there is a report right now which is under development, which is the success story and the way of doing fisher experience, observer experience, and how to start an observer program from these 5 countries. And it will be quite helpful, I think, on how each one of them succeed to do that. And we discovered something which is amazing, because we have both women and men observers. And women were bringing more data than men, because fishers...
You think that was amazing?
It is amazing.
Hands up the women in the room who doesn't think it's amazing.
Let me explain you why. Because in fisheries, unfortunately, I'm saying unfortunately, it's not like a woman field from fisher point of view. But they start working with them. I don't know, they want to take care of them. They didn't want them to spend too much time in the fishing port on boat. And then, I don't know, we have no explanation. You send
raised
a man
his eyebrows
and a woman in the same port to the same fisher, and they come with a lot of data. This is something we just discovered, and we managed even to use this. So, yes. It is happening. Like, I don't know if in other countries.
Let me close you down. And you did say you had a lot of support from the government. Will there be any questions from the floor? I keep saying I'll come to you, and I haven't, because I want to ask Brian something. Are we covering enough ground that it's okay? I'm not kind of ignoring anybody. Okay, because we don't have so many minutes. Oh gosh, we don't have any minutes left at all. Absolutely, Brian. You've got to go in a moment, Brian. I just want to talk about, because again, you know, the word that will most come out, as always, no matter what sector I moderate, is we need to cooperate better, because everything is there, the solutions are there, but somehow there's something missing for various reasons. These fisheries managers, who can have an impact on fishers' behaviour. Is it kind of, how do you see it? Do you need the carrot and stick approach, or is it really a question of training, which we've talked less about? What's your, in a nutshell, view on that, please?
First of all, there are no panaceas in fisheries management. There are no panaceas in fisheries management, only processes. And one of the processes that is completely wrong is the process towards centralizing everything and imposing regulations in a top-down way. That creates a lot of resentment in fishing communities. I mean, fishing communities tend to be isolated, and fishers spend a lot of time at sea, so they're generally not around the normal working hours to go to their Ministry of Fisheries or go to their Department of Fisheries and engage with the fishery managers. So the response has often been to develop fishery management regulations in isolation from the fishers. But where we see a glimmer of hope is in some administrations who are developing much more of a participative approach, much more of a kind of co-management approach. And particularly, I think, a kind of shining light in Europe anyway is the Catalonian regional autonomous government, which has actually made co-management a law. That there is a formal process of setting up co-management committees, and you're following it in Portugal. Portugal is another inspiration for us in Europe, who are really sticking their necks out, if you like, to move away from this very traditional approach to much more of a co-management approach. And it's complex. It's like collaboration. It's like getting people to work together. It doesn't happen overnight. There's a whole process that must be gone through: training, awareness raising, respect, mutual respect, not just respect for fishermen by managers, but also fishermen must also find a way to engage with managers who are coming from a completely different world.
I only need to do that because I'm aware that it's 4:34 and I need to give you some last words, and I need Anis, but maybe we'll do that as your last. There's a question here, but let me just, do you have to run, literally? So do you want to say, I mean, I was going to ask you what would be your sort of, either what would be your big ask, whether it's to the EU, whether it's to industry, whether it's to push this on, or maybe what can you as a member state, and maybe as a beacon of inspiration, I think Martin used the word inspiration at the beginning, for other member states. So be really specific.
Very, very fast. I think we need to dialogue a lot with fishermen, NGOs, and science all together, because the only way to get the solution is not from a top-down, but from a bottom-up, as Brian has said.
Indeed, but you need the top-down to be behind it, don't you? I mean, Anis also said you still need the top-down to be behind it, because that enables collaboration to flourish.
If you don't talk to the fishermen convince the fishermen that this is good for them, you get nothing. And I talked to you about the experience of 28 years dealing with fishermen. Yeah. And I know the only way to convince fishermen to apply a new tool is that this is going to be good for them. It's not imposed to them. It's just to convince them. And I think this is the most important part, to have a good dialogue, fishermen, NGOs, and science, and for sure administration.
Okay. Do you need to scoot? Yeah. Okay, can I am going to close it. Oh, one more before you scoot. Where do you have a microphone there? They need to come. Oh, did you? Thought you wanted to tell him off before he left, or maybe just say thank you. Okay, I'm winding up in 5 minutes anyway, but I don't want you to miss whatever it is you have to miss. So a warm thanks to you very, very much for being here. Perhaps just a very brief last word to not prevail, because all of these people, you're standing between them and alcohol, and it's a sunny day. So who wants to go next? Should we just get this question out the way? I think that's fair dues, and then I'll come to Umberto. Here we go. So there was a question for you. Some fishers in the south of Portugal believe, well, you can read it, because my eyesight's not brilliant.
Oh, I think they okay.
Thank you.
The question is related to the Lasmo Bronx. And, okay.
There we go. Some fishers in the south of Portugal believe that deep sea elasmos will eat all the crustaceans.
Yes.
So they don't want to reduce catch of these species. They don't want to reduce. Does it happen in the Med? And just, is there two ways we can tackle these types of misconceptions? I literally want 2 sentences. Are there ways we can tackle? Go for it.
Of course, we can tackle. You saw that, unfortunately, Erasmus grants are the most bycatch taxa. And this is happening all over the world, not only in the Met. And I have to say that this is, unfortunately, also the side effect of some movies. The famous one is the Jaws movie, that people are not shocked if they found an elasmobranch in the marketplace. They are shocked if they see a sea turtle bycatch, if you see cetacean, if you see a seabird. But this is also another issue because elasmobranchs have also vulnerable species and commercial species. And right now, there is no solution that allow you to decrease the bycatch of elasmobranchs. There is only one solution to try to keep them alive. So once on board, to try to release them. Now, this is not also true because all these species we are talking about, they are going to catch fish or to eat when they need. Yeah. It's not like us. So we are going there to fish lot of fish and seafood, but it's not only to eat, it's also to sell it in the marketplace because it has a price.
So are there misconceptions that can be addressed? Or okay,
exactly.
just one salute. How would we do that? How would you do it? One sentence.
We need already to have some harmonization with the global regulation, with the regional regulation, especially in the Med, because in the Med there are vulnerable species protected by the Barcelona Convention, just to take this for example, but at national level, still a lot of countries didn't ban the catch of sharks. Okay. So they are collapsing.
Okay, and we've got to wrap up. Look.
Yes.
Look, I'm trying. Yes. I swear to God I'm trying. I promise I'm trying, and I'm trying to be balanced. Okay, we need to stop. A last word from you, whether it's an ask, well, you decide what you want to say. I was going to just say, let's be solution-orientated and inspirational. If you have a last word that's what I'm going to bring to the table to progress this, or what you would ask from a fellow stakeholder, I'm happy to hear that, but over to you.
Yes, I have an angle to bring, which is not so much now the psychology of fishers, but the psychology of humans, including when they are public administration or ministers, because we know, we are not emotionless, rational Vesuvians, as Mr. Spock in Star Trek. We are humans. We have emotions. We have territoriality. My toys are better than others, and I don't like to share them. So the problem, the answer for this is what Rafael was saying, which is collaboration. You must impose co-ownership of the problem. Often in fisheries administrations, if they look at marine protected areas, that looks like an unwelcome restriction. But actually a no-take zone should be called the fisheries replenishment zone because that's what it is. It's an issue for the fisheries administration. Okay, a short one please from you, Anna. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to highlight the co-management and all the developments in eco-labeling and certified fisheries. So the right word is to move towards sustainable fisheries and impose more responsibility from fishing and all the stakeholders in that path.
Yeah, and right along the chain, as we heard, I think, from Brian. Brian, do you want to come in now, please? Thank you.
Just to a very brief point, co-management is not just about shifting responsibility onto the fishers, it's also about shifting the power. Fishermen must have the decision-making power and the means to do it. So that means resources. So if fishers are going to become managers, they need resources to do that.
Okay. Meaning funding resources, meaning being brought to the table, meaning training.
And training, funding, equipment.
And the space and the mechanisms and the time
as
to
equals.
be a part. Yeah.
They're managers as equals with the authorities.
Okay. For you, please.
Just a warning for us to be aware of a topic that probably some of you already know, that's deep sea mining. That is a huge problem that is coming about. And with this Green Deal mindset, if you don't look at this type of growth paradigm, we will have several problems regarding the conservation of marine ecosystems if we go into deep sea mining, or at least if we just go with this mindset of just producing more minerals or removing more minerals to make a green transition. So it's awareness that I put here. but obviously the inspirational part was made by all the speakers in the beginning. So,
so you're taking yourself out from the side. I don't have to be inspirational just from the European Parliament. Okay, Anis, last word, and I'm going to ask you a question for the shortest answer. You were so enthusiastic, and I think you shared that about the observers. If there was another kind of solution that you want to see more anchored and spread, see, I used the word anchor, did you see that there? What would it be? Send a sentence, go on.
There is only a thing, continue working together.
Okay.
Only that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. There is so much to say there. I do apologise that we just scratched the surface, and sorry we did start late, but even though we started late, we did go on a little bit longer, so forgive me. Absolutely, I do concur with management. It's all very well, also in the context of we must collaborate, but everybody's got to step up to the plate. They can't just wait. There can't be a passenger or then nobody. It's like however many horsemen of the apocalypse, nobody's actually, riding the horse. Tailored solutions, absolutely critical. Something very interesting for me is to avoid the polarization, I think, between the small-scale fishers and the bigger industrial. I mean, I know there are clearly issues in both quarters, and I know that there are certain things that have been said about small-scale fishers that hasn't come up today that you wanted to sort of defend, Brian, but I think it's important to look at where there is everybody wanting to do well, fishermen wanting to do well, and where the different issues, and as you yourself, Brian, rightly said, it's incredibly diverse, hence the tailored solutions. We need to look at how this all fits in with overfishing and with discards. The observers is fantastic. I think we need to capitalise on the fact that the general public are so behind that. Multi-taxa sound like it's going to be a brilliant thing going forward. All of those different policy areas, biodiversity strategy, Green Deal. Hopefully you're right when you say better monitoring, better evaluation, better funding, and all of that. So thank you very much to these good people. You can give them a warm round of applause. Thank you. Thanks also to Anouk Puy-Martin and Naima Crotty at BirdLife at the back, and Daniel Mitchell. Can you give them a nice warm clap, please? And for hosting this, because I think it was in the context of Ocean Week, it's quite hard to get it. You've got an audience that's being demanded in a lot of directions. Big thanks to you for choosing us. Really, I wish you very much luck. Don't forget to tweet your thoughts, #EU Ocean Week. Now you're allowed to have a very nice, refreshing drink before you scoot off into the sunset. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.